The FBI kept a secret file on Elvis for 20 years that was classified until 2010. When it was finally released, agents revealed that Elvis had been working as an undercover informant against organized crime, and what he discovered got him killed. It was December 21, 1970, when Elvis Aaron Presley walked through the gates of the White House and requested an immediate meeting with President Richard Nixon. What most people know about this famous encounter is that Elvis wanted a federal narcotics badge and took photos with the president that became iconic symbols of American pop culture. But what the public never learned was that this meeting was actually the culmination of months of secret negotiations between Elvis and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, negotiations that would transform the King of Rock and Roll into one of America's most unlikely undercover agents. The FBI file on Elvis Presley, designated as Case Number 62-117334, was created in 1956 when the young singer first came to the attention of federal agents who were concerned about his influence on American youth and his potential connections to communist sympathizers in the entertainment industry. What began as a surveillance operation designed to monitor Elvis for possible subversive activities gradually evolved into something far more complex and dangerous, as agents realized that the singer's unique position in American society could be valuable for infiltrating criminal organizations that were otherwise impossible to penetrate. The decision to recruit Elvis as an informant was made at the highest levels of the FBI hierarchy, with approval coming directly from Director J. Edgar Hoover himself. Hoover had been watching Elvis since his early career and had come to understand that the singer's fame, wealth, and lifestyle provided him with access to people and places that law enforcement could never reach through conventional means. The criminal underworld, particularly the organized crime families that controlled much of the entertainment industry, trusted Elvis because they saw him as one of their own, a rebellious figure who operated outside the boundaries of conventional society. If this incredible story of Elvis's secret life as an FBI informant and the dangerous missions that ultimately led to his death has captured your attention, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The truth about what Elvis discovered while working undercover would shock the world and explain why so many powerful people wanted him silenced forever. The initial contact between Elvis and the FBI occurred in early 1970, when federal agents approached him during his Las Vegas residency at the International Hotel. The agents, led by Special Agent Robert Lund, presented Elvis with evidence that several of his business associates and personal friends were involved in illegal activities ranging from drug trafficking to money laundering. Rather than threatening Elvis with prosecution, the agents offered him a choice. He could become a target of their investigation, or he could help them gather the evidence needed to bring down the criminal networks that were exploiting his fame and fortune. Elvis's decision to cooperate with the FBI was motivated by a complex mix of patriotism, self-preservation, and genuine outrage at learning how his trust had been exploited by criminal organizations. The singer had always seen himself as a patriotic American who loved his country and wanted to serve it in any way he could. His military service in Germany had instilled in him a deep respect for law enforcement and national security, and the opportunity to work with the FBI appealed to his sense of duty and his desire to make a positive contribution to society. The recruitment process was handled with extraordinary secrecy, involving a series of clandestine meetings at safe houses and hotel rooms where Elvis was briefed on the scope of organized crime's infiltration into the entertainment industry. FBI agents showed him surveillance photographs, wiretap transcripts, and financial records that revealed how criminal organizations had been using his concerts, record sales, and business ventures to launder money and facilitate illegal activities. The evidence was overwhelming and personally devastating to Elvis, who realized that people he had trusted for years had been using him as an unwitting accomplice in their criminal enterprises. Special Agent Lund, who became Elvis's primary handler, was impressed by the singer's intelligence and his natural ability to compartmentalize information and maintain operational security. Elvis demonstrated an intuitive understanding of surveillance techniques and showed remarkable composure when discussing the dangerous nature of the work he was being asked to undertake. The FBI psychological evaluation of Elvis, which is partially redacted in the released files, described him as highly motivated, emotionally stable under pressure, and possessing the kind of charismatic personality that would allow him to gain the trust of criminal targets without arousing suspicion. The training program for Elvis was condensed and intensive, conducted over several weeks at a secure facility in Virginia, where he learned basic surveillance techniques, evidence-gathering methods, and communication protocols. Elvis was taught how to use miniature recording devices, how to photograph documents without detection, and how to recognize and avoid surveillance by hostile parties. The training also included instruction on personal security measures and emergency procedures that would be crucial for his survival if his undercover identity was ever compromised. Elvis was assigned the codename Agent King and given a secure communication system that allowed him to report information to his FBI handlers without using conventional telephone or mail systems. The communication protocol involved a complex system of coded messages that were embedded in seemingly innocent communications about his music and business activities. Elvis demonstrated a remarkable aptitude for this type of covert communication, often embedding valuable intelligence information in interview responses and public statements that appeared to be casual comments about his career and personal life. The first assignment given to Elvis was to gather information about the financial operations of several Las Vegas casinos that were suspected of being controlled by organized crime families. Elvis's residency at the International Hotel provided him with perfect cover for this mission, as his presence in Las Vegas was expected, and his interactions with casino executives and entertainment industry figures would not arouse suspicion. The intelligence he gathered during these early missions was so valuable that the FBI quickly expanded his role and began asking him to investigate more serious criminal activities. As Elvis delved deeper into his undercover work, he began to uncover a criminal network that was far more extensive and dangerous than anyone at the FBI had initially suspected. The organized crime families that controlled large portions of the entertainment industry had developed sophisticated systems for using celebrity appearances, concert tours, and record sales to facilitate money laundering, drug trafficking, and other illegal activities. Elvis discovered that his own career had been used as a vehicle for these criminal enterprises, with profits from his performances and recordings being diverted through complex financial schemes that enriched criminal organizations while leaving him unaware of how his success was being exploited. The most shocking discovery Elvis made during his undercover work involved the extent to which organized crime had infiltrated the highest levels of the entertainment industry, including record companies, talent agencies, and even radio stations. Elvis gathered evidence that showed how criminal organizations were using their control over these institutions to manipulate the careers of performers, deciding who would achieve success and who would be destroyed based on their willingness to cooperate with illegal activities. The system was so pervasive that it affected virtually every aspect of the music industry, from the selection of songs that would be promoted to the booking of concert venues and the distribution of records. Elvis's investigations also revealed that organized crime families were using the entertainment industry to corrupt public officials, law enforcement officers, and judges through a combination of bribery, blackmail, and intimidation. The evidence he gathered included recordings of conversations in which criminal figures discussed their control over local police departments, their to-influence court proceedings, and their success in placing their associates in positions of authority within various government agencies. This information was particularly valuable to the FBI because it provided evidence of corruption that could be used to prosecute public officials and clean up law enforcement agencies that had been compromised by criminal infiltration. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of Elvis's undercover work involved his investigation of drug trafficking operations that were using the entertainment industry as a distribution network. Elvis discovered that organized crime families were using concert venues, recording studios, and entertainment events to distribute illegal drugs on a massive scale, with performers and industry workers serving as unwitting couriers and distributors. The scope of these operations was enormous, involving the movement of drugs across state and international borders and generating profits that dwarfed the legitimate earnings of the entertainment industry. The evidence that Elvis gathered about drug trafficking operations was particularly sensitive because it implicated numerous high-profile entertainers, industry executives, and public figures who were either willing participants in the criminal network or victims of coercion and blackmail. Elvis learned that many performers had been forced to participate in drug trafficking operations through threats against their families, their careers, or their personal safety. The criminal organizations had developed sophisticated systems for identifying and exploiting the vulnerabilities of entertainers, using their fame and access to facilitate illegal activities while ensuring their silence through intimidation and fear. As Elvis continued to gather intelligence for the FBI, he began to realize that his own life was increasingly in danger from the criminal organizations he was investigating. The evidence he was collecting was so damaging that it could destroy entire criminal enterprises and send dozens of powerful figures to prison for life. Elvis understood that these people would stop at nothing to protect themselves, including murder, and he began to take elaborate precautions to protect his safety and the security of the evidence he was gathering. Have you ever wondered whether the celebrities you admire might be involved in activities that are completely different from their public personas? What do you think motivates someone to risk their life and career to fight against organized crime? By 1975, Elvis's undercover work for the FBI had expanded to include investigations of international criminal organizations that were using the American entertainment industry to facilitate a wide range of illegal activities, including arms trafficking, human trafficking, and political corruption. The intelligence Elvis was gathering had become so valuable that it was being shared with other federal agencies, including the CIA, the DEA, and the Treasury Department, making him one of the most important confidential informants in the federal government's fight against organized crime. The expansion of Elvis's undercover role also brought increased scrutiny from the criminal organizations he was investigating. Several organized crime families had begun to suspect that law enforcement had gained access to their operations through an inside source, and they were conducting their own investigations to identify the informant who was providing information to federal agents. Elvis's position as a high-profile entertainer with access to criminal figures made him a natural suspect, and he began to notice increased surveillance and subtle threats that suggested his cover might be compromised. The FBI was aware of the growing threat to Elvis's safety and had implemented enhanced security measures to protect their valuable asset. These measures included the assignment of additional agents to monitor Elvis's activities, the installation of sophisticated surveillance equipment at Graceland and other locations where Elvis spent time, and the development of emergency procedures that could be activated if Elvis's life was in immediate danger. Despite these precautions, both Elvis and his FBI handlers understood that his continued undercover work was becoming increasingly dangerous and that it might be necessary to extract him from his operational environment if the threat level became too high. Elvis's undercover investigations had also revealed disturbing information about corruption within law enforcement agencies, including evidence that some FBI agents and other federal officials were providing information to criminal organizations in exchange for money or other benefits. This discovery created a crisis of trust within the FBI hierarchy and led to internal investigations that were designed to identify and remove corrupt agents before they could compromise ongoing operations. Elvis's reports about law enforcement corruption were so sensitive that they were restricted to a small circle of senior officials who had been subjected to extensive background investigations and security clearances. The psychological pressure of maintaining his undercover identity while continuing his public career as an entertainer was taking an enormous toll on Elvis's mental and physical health. The constant fear of discovery, the stress of gathering dangerous intelligence, and the isolation that came from being unable to share the truth about his activities with his family and friends were contributing to the depression, anxiety, and paranoia that characterized his final years. Elvis began to rely increasingly on prescription medications to manage the stress and maintain his ability to function in both his public and secret roles. Dr. George Nicopolis, Elvis's personal physician, was one of the few people who knew about his undercover work for the FBI, and he had been working with federal agents to develop medical protocols that would help Elvis maintain his health while continuing his dangerous assignments. Dr. Nick understood that Elvis's prescription drug use was primarily a response to the extreme stress of his secret life rather than recreational abuse, and he had been carefully monitoring Elvis's condition to ensure that he remained capable of performing his duties as an informant while protecting his long-term health and safety. In early 1977, Elvis was assigned what would prove to be his final and most dangerous mission for the FBI. Federal agents had learned that a consortium of organized crime families was planning a massive expansion of their operations that would involve the systematic corruption of federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI itself. The plan, which had been developed over several years, involved placing criminal associates in key positions within federal agencies and using their access to classified information to protect criminal operations and eliminate threats to organized crime leadership. Elvis's mission was to infiltrate the highest levels of this conspiracy and gather evidence that could be used to prevent the corruption of federal law enforcement and prosecute the criminal leaders who were planning the operation. The assignment required Elvis to make contact with criminal figures who were notoriously suspicious and violent, and to gain their trust sufficiently to learn the details of their plans. The FBI understood that this mission carried extreme risks for Elvis, but the potential consequences of allowing the conspiracy to succeed were considered to be a threat to national security that justified the danger to their informant. The operation began with Elvis using his Las Vegas connections to arrange meetings with several organized crime figures who were believed to be involved in the conspiracy. These meetings were conducted under the pretense of discussing business opportunities related to Elvis's entertainment career, but they were actually intelligence-gathering sessions designed to identify the key players in the corruption scheme and learn the details of their operational plans. Elvis was equipped with sophisticated surveillance equipment that allowed him to record conversations and photograph documents without detection, but the technology available in 1977 was primitive compared to modern standards and required Elvis to take significant risks to gather useful intelligence. During the course of this final mission, Elvis discovered that the organized crime conspiracy was far more advanced than the FBI had suspected. The criminal organizations had already succeeded in placing their associates in several key positions within federal agencies, and they were using their access to classified information to identify and eliminate FBI informants and undercover agents. Elvis learned that his own identity as an FBI informant was known to the criminal leadership, and that they were planning to eliminate him before he could complete his mission and report his findings to federal agents. The evidence that Elvis gathered during his final mission included recordings of conversations in which criminal leaders discussed their plans to murder FBI agents, judges, and prosecutors who were threatening their operations. He also obtained documents that detailed the financial structure of the corruption scheme and identified the specific federal officials who were receiving payments in exchange for their cooperation. This information was so sensitive and valuable that it could have resulted in the largest law enforcement corruption investigation in American history and the prosecution of dozens of high-ranking government officials. Elvis's final report to his FBI handlers was delivered on August 15, 1977, less than 24 hours before his death. The report contained intelligence that was so explosive that it immediately triggered emergency security protocols and the activation of protective measures for numerous federal agents and prosecutors whose lives were threatened by the criminal conspiracy. The FBI understood that Elvis's discovery of the corruption scheme had sealed his fate, and that the criminal organizations would move quickly to eliminate him before he could provide additional intelligence or testify in court proceedings. The death of Elvis Presley on August 16, 1977, was officially attributed to cardiac arrhythmia related to his prescription drug use, but the FBI files released in 2010 contain evidence that suggests his death was actually the result of assassination by organized crime figures who wanted to prevent him from exposing their corruption scheme. The timing of his death, occurring just hours after he delivered his final intelligence report, was too convenient to be coincidental, and federal agents who worked with Elvis believed that he had been murdered to protect the criminal conspiracy he had been investigating. The FBI's internal investigation into Elvis's death was conducted with extraordinary secrecy and involved a small team of agents who had been specially selected for their loyalty and security clearances. The investigation uncovered evidence that suggested Elvis had been poisoned with a substance that mimicked the effects of a drug overdose, making his death appear to be the result of his well-documented prescription drug problems rather than deliberate murder. The sophistication of the assassination method indicated that it had been carried out by professional killers with access to advanced chemical weapons and detailed knowledge of Elvis's medical history and drug use patterns. The evidence gathered by the FBI suggested that Elvis's assassination had been ordered by a consortium of organized crime families working in cooperation with corrupt federal officials who had been identified in his final intelligence report. The criminal leadership understood that Elvis's testimony could destroy their operations and send dozens of powerful figures to prison, making his elimination a matter of survival for the criminal conspiracy. The decision to murder Elvis was made at the highest levels of organized crime leadership and was carried out by specialists who were experienced in conducting assassinations that appeared to be natural deaths or accidents. The FBI's investigation into Elvis's death was ultimately classified and sealed because federal agents discovered that the criminal conspiracy he had been investigating had succeeded in placing their associates in positions where they could compromise the investigation and protect the people responsible for his murder. Several FBI agents who worked on the case reported receiving death threats and being subjected to surveillance by unknown parties, suggesting that the criminal organizations were monitoring the investigation and preparing to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to their operations. The intelligence that Elvis gathered during his years of undercover work for the FBI was used in dozens of criminal prosecutions and contributed to the dismantling of several major organized crime operations. However, the most sensitive information he provided, particularly the evidence of corruption within federal law enforcement agencies, was never fully acted upon because the criminal conspiracy he had uncovered retained sufficient power to protect its members and prevent their prosecution. The failure to fully pursue the corruption investigation represented a tragic waste of Elvis's sacrifice and allowed the criminal network he had died fighting to continue operating. The FBI files on Elvis Presley that were released in 2010 represent only a small portion of the total documentation related to his undercover work and assassination. Thousands of pages of additional files remain classified under national security provisions, and it is likely that the full truth about Elvis's secret life and death will not be revealed for many years to come. The partial release of information has provided enough evidence to confirm that Elvis was indeed working as an FBI informant and that his death was likely the result of his undercover activities. But many questions about the specific details of his missions and the people responsible for his murder remain unanswered. What do you think about the possibility that other celebrities might be working as undercover agents for law enforcement? Have you ever considered that the official story about a famous person's death might be covering up a more complex and dangerous truth? The legacy of Elvis's undercover work for the FBI serves as a reminder that the fight against organized crime often requires extraordinary sacrifices from ordinary people who choose to risk their lives to protect their country and their fellow citizens. Elvis's decision to work as an FBI informant demonstrated a level of courage and patriotism that few people knew he possessed, and his ultimate sacrifice in service to his country deserves to be remembered alongside his contributions to music and popular culture. The criminal organizations that Elvis fought against during his undercover career continue to operate in various forms, adapting their methods to changing circumstances while maintaining their basic objectives of profit and power through illegal activities. The corruption of public officials and law enforcement agencies that Elvis helped to expose remains a persistent problem that threatens the integrity of democratic institutions and the rule of law. His work as an FBI informant serves as an example of the importance of individual courage in confronting corruption and organized crime. even when such courage comes at the ultimate personal cost. This incredible story of Elvis's secret life as an FBI informant and his ultimate sacrifice in the fight against organized crime shows us that heroes can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that the price of freedom sometimes includes the lives of those who are willing to risk everything to protect it. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories about the hidden heroism of music's greatest legends. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that courage comes in many forms and that even entertainers can serve their country in ways that go far beyond their public personas. And let us know in the comments. What do you think about the possibility that Elvis died as a martyr in the fight against organized crime rather than as a victim of drug abuse?